Hey everybody, I'm Tania Jaeger with TwistedHeart Puppetworks, and I'm creating a video on storytelling with shadow puppetry. So this video is going to take you through a step-by-step process of kind of how to tell a story through shadow puppetry and the way that you want to organize things to be able to do that successfully. So one of the very first things that you need to think about when you're telling a story through shadow puppetry is figure out what kind of story you want to tell. So what is your story, right? And there's a couple of different things that we can think about when we're thinking about what kind of story you want to tell. First of all, stories, really good stories, convey emotions, and they bring out emotions in people, right? And so we want to think about, first of all, what type of emotions we want to bring out in people. Do you want to have suspense in your story? Do you want to create a certain amount of joy or happiness from your story? Do you want to have maybe one of the scenes convey a certain amount of loneliness in your story? So emotions is something really important to kind of think about when we're thinking about creating a story. The second thing that I want you to think about is think about intentions, right? What is your intention in telling this story? Lots of different stories have things like morals or values attached to them. You could tell a political story that has some sort of political message that you know, if you want to go that route. And you know, really good stories can be just for fun as well, to get a laugh and just for sharing with other people. So kind of think about what your intentions are. The third thing that I want you to think about when you're thinking about what story do I want to tell is you think about themes, right? So do you want to tell a love story? Or do you want to tell a scary story? Or do you want to tell something that's really humorous and funny? So all of these things are some of the things that you want to think about and maybe jot down, write them down, or have somebody else write them down while you're, you know, kind of chatting about them. And that all goes into what story do I want to tell? I will tell you that I myself paid a lot of money to go to a conference to have a really famous professional puppeteer tell me that people will be really interested in a puppet show that I create surrounding stories in my own life. He said, your life is interesting, and people really like kind of peeking into a mirror or peeking into, you know, a cabinet of your stories. And I really like to tell scary stories. That's one of the things that I feel like I'm really good at. And so for this video, I'm gonna take something that was scary to me and I'm gonna create a story around it. It's something that happened to me and it was kind of scary, and I want to talk about it because there might be other people out there that might look at it and you know, see that I was scared but I got through it, and yeah, maybe that will inspire them. So the really interesting thing about telling our own stories is that when we start to write down our stories or we start to create characters, we pull back a little bit from being so intimately connected with that story. And it's really interesting. It allows us to kind of integrate the story into our lives. And if we had certain unnerving feelings about it, it allows us to process those a little bit better. And it can be a really cathartic experience. So yeah, that's the first part of telling a story. So figure out the emotions, the intentions, and the theme. All right. Okay, the second part of creating a shadow story is to write it down. Write down your story. You want to write it the best way that you can. Now, not all of us are professional writers, and you don't have to be. You really don't. Just write it down on paper, and you can even give it to somebody to proofread, and maybe they could make some suggestions. You know, someone that you trust to look at your work and, you know, have them give you some suggestions about wording or, you know, or not, right? Just write it down the best way that you can, either on the computer or by hand, whatever. So the next part of this, you know, the kind of write it down part, what it helps with is it helps you to think about how this is going to be performed, right? Because if we're doing a show, we're going to perform it for other people. And when you write it down, it gives you a script. That script, you can either take and, number one, you can take it and hand it to someone else and have them read and narrate your piece while you're actually doing the performing. Or number two, one of the things that I like to do is I like to get my phone and record my voice memos, right, on my phone. And then I can replay them back. And that's a great way. So you can either do it recorded or you could have somebody read it while you're performing your story. The other thing that writing things down does, as far as the next step, is it really helps you figure out what's coming next, which is our puppet list, right? When you write things down, you figure out, okay, these are the characters that I'm gonna need. These are maybe some props that I'm gonna need that go along with it to help tell my story, right? So that's something that's really important as well. So yeah, write it down, okay? All right, so the third thing that we need to do is we need to create a list of what puppets you're going to need to tell this story. I call it a puppet list, right? And there's a couple of different things to keep in mind here. Number one, don't go crazy at first, right? Keep it simple. Number two, the more puppets that you have on your list, the more you have to create. So again, streamline the list, and if you can keep it to, you know, just, you know, anywhere between 2 and 5 puppets at first, that's kind of cool. The third thing I want you to consider is, since we're having to make shadow puppets, right? Maybe one of your props, maybe one of those puppets could be an object. Consider using objects. And when I say objects, I mean really just anything that will help tell your story. If you look on your puppet list, and I'm looking on my list and I say, there's a pair of scissors on my list, right? And I know that I have to create every single puppet out of paper, right? And I have to make a lot of these puppets. Maybe if there's something that says scissors on there, I can just take a pair of scissors and shine light behind them, right? And use the actual object in my show rather than, you know, creating a pair of scissors, like drawing out and cutting a pair of scissors out of material like this, right? So I'll share with you what my puppet list for this project looks like. My puppet list needs a woman, who's gonna be me, right? It needs a doctor. It needs a man, who's gonna represent my husband. I need to have a scared face, a puppet with a scared face. I need to have a puppet that looks like a leg bone, right? And then I need to have a happy face. So yeah. And I think also I might try a telephone, making a puppet that is a telephone for a prop. So that's my puppet list. Now you make yours, and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, now that you have your puppet list made and you know how many puppets and just what kind of puppets you need to tell this story, we want to make our puppets. This is kind of the fun part. and it can be a little time consuming, but it is fun. So I'll show you how to do a lot of this stuff. First, we want to draw. If you're a good drawer, we want to draw, or we want to find pre-made silhouettes, maybe on the internet, that you can print out and use as a pattern, right? So we're going to take those and cut them out of just regular, paper like this, and use that as our pattern. Then we're going to take that and we're going to put it on thicker paper. You can use, I like using black poster board, but you can also use cereal boxes, right? Cereal box material is very sturdy and it stands up to being handled quite a bit. And then we can attach rods, which you can use wire hangers, right? This one has a wire hanger that's attached to it, right, as a rod. And we can also use things like bamboo skewers, which I'm gonna show you how to do as well. So yeah, we've gotta make our puppets, right? Go. So here I picked the simple route of choosing a phone silhouette from the internet. Copy onto a Word document and print. We are ready to create some patterns. Here I'm using the scissors to cut this larger image out of computer paper. This pattern will be transferred onto thicker paper to make my puppet. I love hand drawing my own puppets. Start with more simplistic side profile images. I use a white pencil to help the lines show up. You can see that I use X-Acto blades to make really small internal cuts. Only use this type of blade if you've practiced, or you could take it to your parents for help. Otherwise, scissors and hole punches work just fine. Okay guys, so we're gonna rod this little lady and I will show you what that's like. So today we're using bamboo skewers, which come in 100 packs. I like to get them a little bit longer than this, just to make sure that when I'm doing shadow puppetry that they don't kind of show up in the frame. The longer your rod is, if you can have your light source in front of your hand, right, then it doesn't show your hand, right, it just shows the image, and you might get a little bit of the rod in the picture, but not a lot. Anyway, so skewers, bamboo skewers. I like to take the pointy bit and have that be the bit that is interacting with the puppet, just so, I'm not hurting myself if I go and grab for it really quickly and got the sharp end. So you can use lots of different types of tape for this. I use masking tape, and then I will also use gaffer's tape, and I get this at Blick Art Supply. It is a little bit more expensive. I do really prefer to use it, but today I'm gonna demonstrate with just this masking tape. So let's get off this nasty excess bit here. Great, and we are ready to go. Okay, so very simple technique. This is not difficult at all. I'm gonna take a piece of tape, right? And I'm just going to hold this up for the camera. I'm gonna basically take my rod and put it halfway up the piece of tape, right? And then I'm going to fold that over. and then just continue to roll and fold. And what you're doing is you're connecting a strip of tape actually on the rod itself, but then there's this strip of tape that you can flatten and it comes down, right, like this, and it's bendable, it moves, and that's really important. A lot of folks will show you how to put on a rod just directly on like this, and then the rods stick out, and that's not very good for storage. And it's also not that great for manipulation either. So what we want to do is we want to take these rods and we want to be able to tape it on right here so that this will move back and forth, so that when I go to store this, I can lay it down and it'll lay down flat, right? So this tab is really important to have. That really is all there is to it. And then I'm gonna take another little piece of tape. And go ahead and put it here across. So I'm just connecting it. And I don't want any little bits that are showing, so you can wrap it around if you think it'll look okay, right? It won't cause that much of a kind of a bump on the sides. Yeah, we can form fit that. That's the thing about masking tape is when you just have one layer, it's fine. So I'm gonna take this, this now allows me to control my puppet, right? And imagine this is the screen, right? And I can take and control it right this way. And there you go. You've got your rods, right? So now you gotta do that on each one. Okay, so I want to point out here that most of my puppets are just very simple, one piece, not a lot of moving pieces at first. I like things that are really, really simple. And the more joints you put in something, the more complex it gets. But if you want something to be able to have basic movement, it helps to be able to, you know, have two pieces that actually get fastened together as one, right? So that we can create some movement. So just so you guys can see what I've done here, I have, hopefully you can see this, actually, this will help. I have taken her front or her top half, right, and cut out her top half as one particular piece, right, rounding this edge at the bottom. And then I've taken her back half, or I should say her bottom half, and I have made that a separate piece, right? Rounding it at the top, right? So she is made of two separate pieces that I then took and joined, matched up so that, you know, there's no weird parts that kind of stick out when she bends over, right? And I put a brad, a very simple brad in here. And that is gonna allow me to move her back and forth like this, so she has a little bit of movement, which can be fun. And then I will end up placing rods probably up near her neck and then down near the base of the puppet as well, so that I can move the two independently. If you wanted this to swing a little bit more and just have one rod at the top, you could use like a needle and thread and create a knot here and create a knot here, and then it would freely swing. But I don't want her to swing so much. I want her to be able to do deliberate movements. So that's how to do kind of a very simple jointed puppet. Okay. After we're finished making all of our puppets, and hopefully that wasn't too difficult, albeit a little time consuming, we're ready for the next step. And that next step is making a performance shadow screen. This is kind of fun. You can do it out of all different types of materials. Kind of the most typical shadow screen is made out of a light colored sheet, like a bed sheet. Or you can do like a shower curtain from the dollar store. Those are really simple. You just want to make sure that whatever you're shining your light through and you're using for your screen is super tight on all the ends, or as tight as it possibly can be, and that it's nice and smooth, so that when you're running your puppets behind it, then everything shows up really nicely, it doesn't snag too much, and the visuals are good, right? And then beyond that, boom, you got it. You got a performance space, right? So get out those bed sheets, go find that shower curtain, figure out where you're gonna put on this particular performance, and we shine a light back behind it, make sure that the light is nice and bright, and we've got ourselves a space, and we're ready for the next thing. All right, so I can't emphasize this last point enough. The last thing that we want to do before we're going to perform for other people is rehearse. You want to rehearse your story. Do it several times so that you're really comfortable with it. Get that person who is maybe reading the story for you and narrating to sit and narrate a couple of times and go through it while you're actually doing the motions and figuring out how you're going to move the puppets and when they're going to enter and exit. This is really, really important. It's a lot of people just want to jump into the performance part of it, and rehearsal is very important. Rehearsal makes good theater, right? So don't forget this step. Rehearse a couple of times, throw on that recording that you did, or have that person who's narrating help you, and get it down, and then you're ready to perform.
There once was a belly dancer who loved to dance. She did it for years and years. Boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka. But one day, she got a phone call from her doctor saying there was something wrong with her hip bones and she would have to have surgery. Oh no! She was so scared. She thought she was going to die in surgery. She was also worried that she might never dance again. The day of her surgery came, and the doctor came in and put her to sleep and got to work. Beep, 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 beep. Scalpel. Bone saw. Zzz. Replacement, please. The woman slept all through the surgery, but her husband, who she loved more than anything, was there the whole time. I'm here, honey. I brought you some flowers. You're going to be okay. She was so happy when she woke up because she had not died. Her hip was fixed and her husband paid all the bills so she could recover. Soon she was able to get up and dance with him all around the house. She didn't go back to belly dancing after all. She found she liked being a puppeteer instead. I love shadow puppetry. Yippee! The end.
All right, so I hope you liked this video. It was super fun for me to do. I'm excited to show you my little short video. And if you make one and you want to share it with us, go ahead and post it on YouTube, and then let us know, email or tag San Diego Guild of Puppetry, and we look forward to seeing what you create. Thanks.